Welcome to Hebraic Insights in the Gospels. Join us every Sabbath on Zion Road Radio for a look at the life, deeds, and words of Yeshua Messiah and his followers from the Torah-centric Hebraic perspective they were originally lived and written in.
Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is, and walk in it, and you find rest for your souls. You find rest for your souls. Oh, you find rest for your souls when you walk in his way.
Today's program is about John chapter 10, verse 22 through verse 42. Please get out your Bible and follow along. Why did the religious leaders feel they were being held in suspense? Why didn't Yeshua go to them to seek their approval? Was their authority legitimately from God, or was it an assumed authority given by the ungodly elite of their generation? Is it possible that modern believers could find themselves in a similar situation with the elite of today's world? If so, why shouldn't we let the pressures of the world define us or turn us away from doing all of God's will? To answer these questions, we want to share a teaching Eliyahu gave on today's scripture portion back on November 25th of 2019. Here's Eliyahu ben David.
Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is.
Shabbat Shalom, friends. We're going to be going into more in chapter 10. And some of us have dealt with people like this, very cold, legalistic, authoritarian, religionist types. And Yeshua dealt with people like that too. And I think it's very instructive for us to see how he dealt with them. And these verses occurred around the time of Hanukkah in Jerusalem in the winter. Nasty weather, but supposed to be a very happy time. Hanukkah. You know, sometimes when we think back on ancient times, we think of it as being extremely archaic and nothing like modern times. And the truth is about the temple and a lot of other buildings, they were much better than the buildings we have now. The buildings we have today are usually built in a relatively simple way. They're not very ornate. The temple was amazing. It had gold on it. It was very, very carefully constructed. And it was an amazing building, and it was a huge building. And on a day like this, which was a cold winter day, this is where people went. They got out of the bad weather by going here to the temple in Solomon's porch. It was just a very, very long, lengthy structure with huge pillars, allowing literally thousands of people to congregate there. And if you look more closely at this, directly inside Solomon's porch, what you have there is the courtyard of the Gentiles. So this whole area was open to everybody, even to the Gentiles. So you can almost think of it like a public square kind of area where people could go for various reasons, but certainly to get out of that winter weather. And I think it is kind of interesting that this is where Yeshua was at this time period, because he didn't go seek out the leaders and the important people. This is where you're going to find the everyday people hanging out here in this crowded area where you first enter into the temple. Here we have the Judeans therefore came around him. See, the idea here is he didn't go to them. They came around him. He was there where all the everyday people were. He wasn't seeking out these leaders. He wasn't submitting himself to them. He wasn't saying, oh, I need you to recognize me as somebody important. Mostly he was ignoring them. And then when they came around, he didn't have nice things to say about them. And they were around Yeshua and these Judeans, and it's talking when it says the Judeans, it's meaning these religious leaders. It uses a Greek word that means to encircle or surround. So they were like a bunch of wolves surrounding the prey. This is what they were doing there. And normally you wouldn't even see them there. They were too good to be there. They weren't going to be rubbing elbows with the common people at the entrance of the temple. They had their own private entrance that they went into. So this was a real inconvenience for them, that he didn't come to them. They had to go and seek him out. And that was very much beneath them, and I'm sure put them in a foul mood to start with. And so they said to him, how long will you hold us in suspense? This is telling us why they're there, right? They got sick of waiting. Here's what they're thinking. See, these people think of themselves as so important, nobody can do anything without them. So they're thinking he's going to come to them seeking their approval because everybody else does. He never did that. He didn't go to them seeking their approval. So they were feeling like they were being held in suspense. And they say, if you are the Messiah, tell us plainly. Well, there were some of these people that had been there when he was talking about the good shepherd and about the sheep and so on. But they didn't get any of that. They didn't understand any of that. That was not plain enough for them. And they just wanted something they could grab onto so they could condemn him. This is what they were actually looking for. That's why they had come out. Yeshua told them, I told you and you don't believe. The works that I do in my Father's name, these testify about me. But you don't believe because you're not of my sheep, as I told you. And what did he tell them? He told them they were thieves and robbers who were breaking in to steal the sheep and to ruin the sheep and to kill the sheep. That's what he told them. And he told them that because that's what they were. It's very interesting. When you actually look at the temple, doesn't this look a lot like a sheep pen? You have the door in the front, right? And then it's walled all the way around. And while Yeshua is talking about this here in John chapter 10, he's no doubt is located near the door. And he's talking about being the door. And people are sitting there watching people come in through the door. And then he's talking about these religious leaders being thieves and robbers that come in by another way. If you were one of those people that commonly went to the temple, could you miss what he's talking about? And then now we're looking at the fact that he tells them they're not of my sheep. Well, that's true for more than one reason. Of course, they're not his sheep because they didn't believe in him. But here's another reason. Now, I've taught on this before, so I'm not going into detail, but the history is very clear on who these people really were. They were either Edomites or sympathizers with Edomites. That's who they were. So they actually were thieves and robbers, and not sheep in the sense of truly of Israel. They weren't. There had been Pharisees who were actually righteous, who were believers, but Herod killed them. Because Herod was the king, he was an Edomite, he was put in place by the Romans. He was serving the Romans, and then he wanted people of influence among the people who served him. So you see, what you had was this power structure. You had the Romans who were dominating the country. They put an Edomite king into place. Why would they do that? Well, the Edomite king would have to depend on the Romans to stay in power because the people hated him. That's pretty smart of the Romans politically, isn't it? So then for Herod to stay in power, he realized he needed his own men. So anybody that opposed him, he killed them off, including the Pharisees who had been good guys. And instead, he put his brother Edomites into those positions as religious leaders, or those Israelites who would collaborate with the Edomites that were in power. So the truth is, when you really look at this, these people were not Yeshua's sheep at all. And they really were thieves and robbers because they did not belong ruling over the people in the temple of Yahweh. That was a holy place that was supposed to be set apart for Yahweh. It was his house. And that made it Messiah's house. So Messiah was the true shepherd there, right? He was the legitimate shepherd there. And they were not. Even though they had all the trappings of power, they had all the trappings of authority. It's kind of like somebody walking up to you in a blue uniform and a badge. You just assume this is a policeman who has authority. Only if he just got that badge and that uniform at the costume shop, what would it mean? Wouldn't mean anything. It would be a big lie. That's who those people were. They were a big lie. So this is why Yeshua never went to them to seek their approval. Why would you? So no, they were not his sheep. And as Yeshua had said, the thief only comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And that's what they were doing. As a matter of fact, that whole temple was simply that evil system co-opting the things of Yahweh for their own use. That's what they were doing. That's what that place was about. Ripping off the believers. That's what it was about. Selling the things they needed for the sacrifices at exorbitant prices, accepting only a certain kind of money and having money changers who were charging high amounts of interest, and the whole rest of it. A big rip-off scam was going on there at the temple. And these people were the people who were overseeing it every day. Can you understand Yeshua's contempt for these men? How do you feel about people like this? Yeshua was fulfilling prophecy. in his dealings with these people. In Ezekiel chapter 34, it talks about them, these shepherds of Israel. Woe to the shepherds of Israel who feed themselves, it says. And it says, you kill the fatlings, talks about how they basically not only do not take care of the sheep, but exploit the sheep. With force and with rigor, you have ruled over them, the prophecy says. These are the people that Yeshua was dealing with. I think it's important for us to understand this because while these people had a veneer of being righteous and they claimed we're disciples of Moses, who were they really? You know who they were? They were sellouts to the Roman system. They were sellouts to Herod, and they were sellouts to the economic establishment that had been set up to rip off all the people. This is why they were rich and lived in fancy houses and considered the poor people all to be beneath them. So along comes Yeshua and he starts exposing them. He's exposing them in language that common people can understand, but they can't even understand what he's saying. But they sense it. They know that he's exposing them. And he is not recognizing their assumed authority. And they see him as a danger. What would have happened if they had gotten a hold of him that day when they surrounded him? They wanted to get rid of him as soon as they could. But it wasn't time yet, and he managed to elude them. Well, do we have people like that today? Do we have to worry about people like this today? Well, we do have hypocritical religionist leaders, and that might be the first thing we think of when we're talking about Pharisees. But, mostly those people have been pretty much defanged by now. They don't have the kind of power that these Pharisees had. They don't have life and death authority over people, not in developed countries. However, we have a rising tide of a religious spirit that is a lot like the Pharisees. But it's also different than the Pharisees, too. A very interesting thing was in the news. It's an article talking about Chick-fil-A, a fast food restaurant here in America. And Chick-fil-A has been known for being a Christian-owned company. And they're very, very proud of that. And Christians are generally very proud of Chick-fil-A because of this. They do not open the restaurants on Sunday because of their beliefs as Christians and a number of other things. And they had been donating to various causes that commensurate with their beliefs. And they had been resisting the bad press they had been getting because of their Christian beliefs. However, they had been running up into obstacles, and they had not been able to expand their business because they were being oppressed and resisted. It says, as Chick-fil-A expands globally and into more liberal parts of the U.S., the chicken chain plans to change which charities it donates to after years of bad press and protests from the LGBT community. You see, there is a power that is doing the same thing in the world today that the Pharisees were doing under the administration of Herod in the first century. They're using their influence, their power, and their economic connections to influence the agenda, the narrative, and the thinking of people considered the important people in society, and through that, everybody else. You see, this is very much going on right now. What happened with Chick-fil-A is essentially they had wanted to put some of their stores into various airports. And then they should have had just as much right to do that as anybody else. But because they had supported some organizations that weren't liked by the LGBT people, they were denied those business opportunities and other business opportunities. So, unlike Yeshua, who would not fold under pressure, unfortunately they did. And they stopped donating to organizations they had been donating all along, up until then. And they stopped donating specifically because those organizations were viewed as LGBT adversaries. This is how it works. This is how power is exerted by people like the Pharisees in our modern day. This is how it works. Hit people in the pocketbook, and they will change their opinion. Chick-fil-A, very interestingly, said the reason they did this is because they wanted people to see who they really were. And I think we do. Here's some words you see in the news a lot. Cis, racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. And you see these words more and more, all of these words. And the impression you get when you see these words is that these are some of the most deplorable sins in the world. These are what I would call sins against the globalist religion. You know what I did? I looked up these words in the scriptures. Guess how many of them can be found in the scriptures? You know, don't you? None of these words can be found in the scriptures. Now, these words and others like them have been invented in order to list certain sins that you must not commit. And if you do, the system is going to do what they did to Chick-fil-A. They're going to do it to you. Okay? They're going to come against you. These sins are definitely going to count against your social score. Oh, you do have a social score. That's not just China. And you will be penalized for these sins. You will. Can you accept that? If you are penalized for committing any of these sins, are you going to cave in and get in line with the globalist religion? A lot of people are doing that without even thinking about it. They never have thought about where these words come from. They just hear somebody say, "You're homophobic," and all of a sudden they turn into jelly. These words are very powerful. And they do change people's behavior. They do. Should they? Do any of these words represent anything that Yahweh has ever talked about or seems to care about? You know, it's a whole different language, isn't it? And let me tell you something. Language defines thinking. The words you use define how you think. Being defined by these words will change you, and it will turn you into a person in the image of the world instead of in the image of God. And that's a fact. This is why I have deliberately decided I am not going to be intimidated by words like this. Because these people are not going to define who I am, regardless of what they say about me. Just like those Pharisees, they are self-appointed authorities. They have no authority to define how I should live. There's another book for that. And they didn't write it, and they didn't control it. And that's the book that defines for me who I should be. That's why we do what we do, isn't it? You know, we're fighting back. Every single week when we get together and we listen to the words of Yeshua, we read the scriptures, we're fighting back against all of that coercion that is coming at us from the world. It is a huge thing to do. And it is an absolutely necessary thing to do, because you know what is happening mostly? People are being changed by all this without giving it a second thought. They use these words as if they were real words instead of just made up propaganda, which is what they actually are. Most of the time, these words are directed against people that don't feel anything like these words are supposed to mean. A phobia is fear. How many people who are listening to me right now are afraid of homosexuals? I'm not. I'm not. But you'll get this word directed at you just because you believe what the Bible says. Most of these words, even in their actual dictionary meaning, do not apply to most believers. And yet they're being applied to those believers all the time. And what about this first word, cis? Are you kidding me? What kind of word is this? This is a totally invented word. People never even thought of this concept for 6,000 years. And now, boom, it just comes out of the air somewhere? No, it didn't. It was invented. It was invented as part of the new religion, the global religion, the cool religion. Remember this? Half of America are racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, and Islamophobic. Why would Hillary Clinton say that? There's a lot of people that are scared to death to be identified that way. Oh, I don't want to be part of those people who are homophobic, xenophobic, and Islamophobic. That's manipulation, friends. Don't let people define you. Let Yahweh define you. There's no pressure at all. As soon as you understand this is all a scam to control you. As soon as you see through those people and you see it's like the emperor with no clothes, the scam is over. Now you know it for what it is, and you can actually make decisions about it. Yes, you might still be threatened with your job being taken away from you, with being kicked out of your rental unit, and other things where people want to socially punish you. That could still happen. But isn't it better if you know where it's really coming from? Suffer hardship as a good soldier of Yeshua Messiah. Well, here's a guy, Archbishop Tutu, world famous clergyman, would not worship a homophobic God. So what he's telling everybody is God himself should be defined by this new globalist religion. Talk about blasphemy. And why do you think it's on the front page of the BBC? You know, for some reason, they haven't put my program on there. They're all down with this. You see what I'm saying? They're all wanting to redefine how people think. Even God is not off limits to them. And this is having a big effect. Here's another example. Pope Francis compares politicians' homophobic rhetoric to that of Hitler. You know what? I listen to the news quite a bit, and I hear politicians quite a bit. I haven't heard this homophobic rhetoric. Have you? I just don't hear that. Maybe in some other countries or something. I don't know exactly what Pope Francis is talking about, but I'm pretty sure whatever they're saying is not as bad as Hitler. Why is it that whenever they want to tar somebody as being the worst possible person, it's always Hitler? I don't think we should do that because you know what? Hitler killed 6 million Jews. I don't think these politicians did that. I think it minimizes the evil that Hitler actually did to invoke his name every time we don't like somebody. But these people do that with impunity. And the Pope, apparently, does it with impunity too. And whose camp does this put the Pope in? If you didn't know already, he's totally down with the globalist religion. It's all part of the same thing. And this is all coercion, friends. This is no different than those Pharisees. It's all meant to coerce you into the mold. That's what it is. And a lot of this, you know who it's aimed at? They don't care about people like me. They figure, hey, 10, 20 years, I'm going to be dead. This is all aimed at you, young people. You're the real targets of this. This is how they're going to change the world. If they can change you, then they can bring in their globalist one world order. This is all meant to change you. That's why your parents and the Bible, God, it's all stupid. That's what you're going to hear from these people. That's all stupid. That's all outdated. Just don't be homophobic or whatever. you know? They're trying to change you. Don't let them use you like that. Stand up to them. Don't let them have your brain. You know, a big bid for this comes from the entertainment industry. Here's an interesting article, how spiritual snobs became the new 1%. Now, personally, I find this very interesting because, you know, in this modern age, the impression they give you is now it's all about science and religion is superstitious. It turns out it's just the Bible that's superstitious because these people love religion. They have this eclectic kind of religion that they do that has some Buddhism in there, has some Hinduism in there, some native spirituality in there, some Chinese herbalism is in there, some whatever. And it's all mixed up together. And as long as it's not about being a disciple of Messiah, it's good. As long as it's about saving the planet, being enlightened, it's good. And these are the people that are leading the way on this stuff right now. The entertainers. They have a lot of influence. A lot of influence. And a lot of them are part of this movement. It's a very interesting article. And these are all famous people. And it says enlightenment is the new status symbol for the elite. It names some of them and it says the undisputed gods of the wellness aristocracy. Now, this is very interesting about this too, because see, what they're wanting to do is change behavior. So there's a focus of something that's real. We all want to be well. We all want to be healthy. But you've probably noticed how this emphasis on wellness is just wrapped right in with this kind of false spirituality. And they make it part of it because this way, it's a way to focus it on you. It's a way to get a hold of you in a place where you have a need. So this is what they're doing. So you have to be careful with this wellness stuff because even though we all need to be well, some of it is actually being put forth in a way that is very deceptive. You know, recently I came across something I thought was interesting and pretty amazing along these lines. This is something like the Society for Existential Risk or the Existential Risk Foundation or whatever. And I foolishly copied it so small I can't read it. But what it's actually about is it's an organization of globalists, scientists, and other famous people who are basically a think tank related to things that could destroy the world, essentially, existential threats. It says, we are dedicated to the study and mitigation of risks that could lead to human extinction or civilizational collapse. So it's kind of interesting to me because, you know, there's people, not only people who are Bible believers, but also people of various religions in the world who believe that for spiritual reasons, the world today is on the edge of a great catastrophe. Well, these people think that too. And they're very concerned about it. And it just happens to include people, you have their pictures there. Elon Musk is the first person in line there. and a whole bunch of other very famous, notable people are a part of this. And they say that this is part of a collaborative global community. So this is like the brightest minds throughout the world coming together to solve these problems that are going to destroy the earth and destroy humanity. That sounds like kind of what could be a religious motive. But they're scientists, so it's probably not religion, right? Let's look at some other things here. Here's some of the threats it mentions. Extreme technological risks, I guess, like nuclear bombs and things like that, other things. Global catastrophic biological risks. Extreme risks in the global environment. Risks from artificial intelligence. So these are all globalist risks. And if you read what they have, you will be duly frightened. And you will be faced with the fact that we have these huge global problems that if we don't solve them urgently, we're all going to die. And we need to turn to them because they are the smartest and the brightest in the world, and we all need to work together in this globalist endeavor to save the planet. The planet has been here for quite a while, and it hasn't needed to be saved by human beings so far. Yahweh saved the planet at the flood when the whole place was about to be ruined by fallen spirits and evil people. But there is no record of human beings ever actually saving the planet or of the planet needing to be saved. But this is such a pressing problem today that we really need to have this sustainable future of the United Nations and really give them authority, give them charge over all the resources of the earth to save the planet. And by the way, you're one of those resources. That's what their plan says. And you see what this actually is, the save the planet thing. It's a substitute for doing the divine will. That's what the scriptures tell us. We're made in the image of God to glorify Him. That's why we're here. But in the globalist religion, that's all irrelevant. And God isn't going to save us anyway. And we need to develop this highly evolved globalist entity for humanity to save the planet. And a lot of people are really excited about this. And a lot of this is just coercion. If you do some research, for instance, on climate change, it's been exposed a number of times how the numbers have been monkeyed with in order to put forth a certain picture. And this is what you find the deeper you dig into it, the more deception you find. Exactly the opposite from the scriptures. The deeper you dig into the scriptures, the more truth you find. But the deeper you dig into the claims of the globalists, the more they fall apart. Well, as I continued looking at this website, which is very influential, by the way, in terms of influencing world leaders, business leaders, all kinds of upper echelon people are involved in this and are influenced by this. This is where a lot of this stuff comes from this group and other groups like it, that ends up getting Chick-fil-A threatened at the airport. You see, there's a way this stuff works that's all behind the scenes, where you and I don't see where it all comes from. We think it's all, or it looks like it's all some grassroots kind of thing. It's not. There are people like this, elite people like this, who develop these ideas and then put forth those ideas in the form of propaganda through news, through movies, through TV, through Facebook, Twitter, yada, yada, yada. Have an army of people to go on and do posting in different places and stuff. And who also have an arm to destroy those who in any way are against them. So this is how this coercion is applied. Well, anyhow, this is on the website. It turns out that this whole endeavor is financed by a group called Templeton World Charity Foundation. And this is kind of weird. It says, this project was made possible through the support of a grant from Templeton World Charity Foundation. So, you wonder, who are these people who are supporting this, that are behind this, making all of this happen? Well, I looked them up and found their website. This is what they say their purpose is. They say Templeton World Charity Foundation aims to provide scientific breakthroughs and practical tools relating to the search for meaning, purpose, and truth. Through sharing these spiritual discoveries, we seek to impact individual lives across the world. Oh, I'm sure they do. They do want to impact individual lives. You see, this is what they're all about, is putting science and other practical tools to work in putting forth their idea of spirituality. This is big money that is behind all of this. And I'm pretty sure there's a reason they have world in the name of their foundation, Templeton World Charity Foundation. And I haven't done it, but I'm pretty sure if you dug deep enough with them, you'd find out that they're very much involved in the whole UN agenda. You look at what they show. Now, I found this picture interesting. It's the light coming on, which actually is a picture of enlightenment, right? A Buddhist idea. However, they use scientific language, so it doesn't sound like religion. It's so interesting how this is happening, isn't it? Accelerating research on consciousness. Consciousness. That's the center of transcendental meditation, right? Consciousness. Hinduism, Buddhism. You don't find too much about that in the scriptures. Now, I'm not saying the scriptures tell us we should not have consciousness. I'm just saying it doesn't make that the center of a religious idea. It's really the Eastern religions that do. And that's the first thing they have here with this enlightenment. This is taking something new and blending it with some very old religion, is what this is doing. And it goes on here, diverse intelligences. That's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Diverse intelligences. I wonder if that includes spirits. Just an interesting question. Global innovations for character development. I guess, they want to help us to develop a character that's a lot less homophobic or whatever. And big questions in classrooms. Oh, yeah, classrooms. I wonder why they would be interested in classrooms, spreading their ideas there. I'm pretty sure they're already spreading their ideas there in classrooms. See, it really is aimed at the kids more than anybody. It really is. This is the globalist religion that we're looking at. We don't even realize it, but we're all feeling it. We're all feeling it. We're all influenced by it every day. It's a mindset. And that mindset is permeating the culture. And it's by design. And these guys, even though they're using science for their purposes, they're using high technology for their purposes, they're really no different than hypocritical religionist leaders. They're thieves and robbers. Yahweh did not appoint them to tell you how to live, to replace His word with their ideas. And yet, they think they're right. They think somehow, because I guess they're wealthy, that we should all do what they say. We should all think what they think. We should be part of their globalist endeavor. And if you're not, you get the finger. And it's probably not this one. They claim authority over you. And they think you're too stupid for them just to tell you what the truth is. So instead, they have this elaborate plot of deception and coercion that they are implementing in order to create the world that's even more in their favor than the world is right now. And when that happens, it'll be a lot less in your favor. Trust me on that. By the way, some of these same people are publishing articles on why we should all be eating bugs, for example. Things like this. None of us are going to really like the world that they have in mind when we get there, even though it all sounds like some kind of paradise as they talk about it. So who gave these people the authority to redefine right and wrong? Does wealth, influence, and fame give people the right to define how you should live? Is a person being famous or being a good singer or being a scientist, is that really enough to justify them overruling God Himself? The world has always been against God, right? But what we're looking at here is something that is, to a degree, way beyond anything that has happened since the Tower of Babel. Because you're looking at a whole world movement to essentially co-opt the world. It's just amazing. And if that happens, where are most people going to go? Most people will just be forced, right? Here's what the scriptures tell us this is leading to. 2 Thessalonians 2, 8 through 10. Then the Toraless one will be revealed, whom Adonai will kill with the breath of his mouth and destroy by the manifestation of his coming. Even he whose coming is according to the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deception of wickedness for those who are being lost, because they didn't receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. I read this and I think about these developments in the world and what is truly going on, the ways in which these deceptions are meant to change people and turn them away from God and turn them away from the Torah, the commandments of God. And it's frighteningly close to the same thing, isn't it? It's just this particular Torahless one has not arisen yet. But certainly that system is at work. Daniel 7:25 speaks of this same person that was called the Torahless one there. He shall speak words against the Most High and shall wear out the holy ones of the Most High, and he shall think to change the times and the Torah. Even changing the Torah is not too far for these people. And many of these people are already doing things like that. We know they are, just from the things we see in the news. So, the thing is, when we read verses like our verses today in John chapter 10, we're not just reading ancient history. We're reading about things that are very relevant to us today, only it's developed far beyond where it was then. So you had the same kind of people there in that situation that Yeshua was talking with, but today you have those people who are actually exercising that control on a global level, and they're working very, very hard to solidify that. Now, that sounds very frightening to some people. And no doubt it is an urgent thing. And yet, we have no reason to be phobic about it, to be afraid of it. Because Yeshua said, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." We're going to follow him right home in the remnant Exodus, aren't we? Where he's going to have a place for us through all of these events. He says, "I give eternal life to them." So, they think they have a handle on everything. They think they really can control this whole world and everyone in it. And they might even be able to do that, but they can never control the creator of this universe. And they are forcing a confrontation. It is going to go all the way to the end. And they're going to find out that they're not who they think they are. They're going to have to face up to real power. And as for those who are faithful, well, we can have that confidence that we are safe in our Father's hands.
Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is, and walk in it, and you find rest for your soul.
You have been listening to Hebraic Insights in the Gospels. That's the end of today's program. Some of the scripture references made in today's program are John chapter 10, verse 22 through verse 42, Ezekiel chapter 34, verse 1 through verse 4, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8 through verse 10, and Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. The website Eliyahu referenced is the Center for the Study of Existential Risk. Further teachings and study materials on Hanukkah, the Temple, the history of Israel, the proper order of authority in God's nation, and the history of how Israel departed from that order, how Messiah Yeshua operated according to that order, and the history of how the Gentile schism, known as the Christian Church, departed from that order, the remnant of Israel, prophecy about the remnant of Israel, the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation, end times prophecy, the anti-Messiah, and more about how current news is leading us to that evil kingdom, walking in the Holy Spirit, and how you can prepare yourself spiritually for the events ahead, the return of Yeshua Messiah at the end of this age, and how you can take part in that victory, along with many other teachings and topics, can all be found at our membership site, Zion Tabernacle. Sign up is free. Just go to zion.net. That's TSIYON.NET. New programs on the Gospels will be airing every Sabbath right here on Zion Road Radio. Tune in next Shabbat to learn more Hebraic insights in the Gospels. Shabbat Shalom!
Ask where the good way is, and walk in it, and you'll find a rest for your soul. You'll find a rest for your soul. Oh, you'll find a rest for your soul when you walk in His ways. Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths.
Sinners in the hands of an angry God. Sinners in the hands of an angry God. Lord, I know I'm one. Praise on the lips to an angry God, right here under the sun. Trample on the grace and you shun the rod.
Is Gog of Magog Russia? If not, then who is Gog of Magog, and how do we know? Are there any other places in biblical prophecy that can give us more details? Where does Gog of Magog fit into the timeline of prophetic events? And what relevance does Gog of Magog have to the remnant of Israel? Learn the answers from Eliyahu ben David's seminar entitled Prophetic Fulfillments Just Ahead, available as part of our free video course, Zion Fast Track. Zion Fast Track is available to all members of our community site, Zion Tabernacle, and includes our most vital seminars and presentations for these last days. Membership sign-up is free and easy. To sign up and learn more about what other free resources are available to all Zion Tabernacle members, go to zion.org and click Join Us. That's zion.org, spelled TSIYON.org. Then click Join Us.